How realistic is Harry Potter really? In this episode of the English Right Now podcast, we will explore what Harry Potter gets right about British life and what is just pure fantasy, from schools and houses to traditions, language, and everyday culture. Welcome to the English Right Now podcast. I'm British English teacher Roy, and joining me is my dear friend Rob. Hello.
Hello, Harry Potter. Do you like my Hagrid impression there?
Relatively terrifying. I loved it. So, how are you today?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, I've got my broomstick. I'm ready for a bit of wizard magic in this podcast today.
Fantastic. How much of a Harry Potter fan, or what they call a Potterhead, are you? Are you a Potterhead, or are you just enjoy them? What? How?
Yeah. I'm not a Potterhead. I'm not somebody who's going to queue up to get the latest edition of the book or something like that. But
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with Harry Potter. I sort of watch the films and just interested in him.
Yeah, I would say I'm on the same level. I've read the books. I have read the books and I've watched the films. But my wife, Luciana, is a massive Potterhead. She loves Harry Potter. So in comparison, I'm a relative, newbie to this. But I do enjoy Harry Potter. And we can talk about the fact of what a cultural phenomenon it was. But my wife is from Brazil. And this podcast is kind of sponsored a little bit by her, because when she moved to the UK, she realized that there were more sort of real things in Harry Potter than she expected. So she noticed that, especially with our son going to school, there were some very realistic things in the book. Obviously not magic, don't have dragons either. But there are some very realistic things. And she was surprised, because I think Harry Potter is very familiar to a lot of British people in a lot of ways. I think that's what helps it resonate. But there's a new TV series coming out this year, unless you're watching this podcast next year. December 2026. Are you excited?
Very excited. Now, I've seen a trailer for it already. Yeah. And how the Harry Potter, the guy who's playing Harry Potter now, looks very much like the other guy, Daniel Radcliffe, who originally played
Harry Potter.
Yes. Got the round glasses, of course, as well.
Yeah.
Looks very kind of what's the word? Not authentic, but yeah, true to the original film. That's what I got from the trailer. I mean, I haven't seen the series yet, but
it's very, very familiar if you know the story. It looks very I mean, you've got the train and you've got Hogwarts, you've got a lot of things in there. And I'm taking it you didn't get overly emotional when you saw that trailer.
No.
No. My wife cried with joy. She was like, "It's like my childhood," and I was like, "It's and it's the same way that I used to get about Star Wars." It's not hit home for me that well. But back in the day, I would be Star Wars.
But no, I can understand the tears. I mean, obviously Harry Potter has such a huge legacy he's got now, and international, popular, around the world is pretty incredible. And what I like to think is it does reflect a lot of Britishness, doesn't it?
Yes.
When you see Harry Potter, you think, Britain, old-fashioned Britain.
You do. Yeah, you do. And there was something, wasn't there, about I can't remember who it was, but they wanted only British actors to play the characters and things like this, but in the films and things like this, because to keep it more authentic. But those films are very iconic. A lot of those are iconic, with Michael Gambon, who's sadly no longer with us, and Robbie Coltrane, who's also sadly no longer with us, but and of course Alan Rickman as well. Phenomenal actors were in that. But so one thing, Harry Potter, as I say, my wife thought it was all fantasy from the mind of J.K. Rowling. She thought it was all pure fantasy. And of course, there are, we don't have whomping willows or flying cars, or we're not there yet.
We don't play Quidditch either, do we? We don't play Quidditch.
No, we don't play Quidditch. Though we do play some things that are similar. But in general, she started to realize that actually not all of it was made up. It was kind of what a lot of the best authors and creators do is twisted reality slightly to make it familiar, but also quite, ooh, wow.
Yeah.
So, Hogwarts. Hogwarts is in this old castle. I don't know many schools in old castles, but it's sort of got that feeling of these very traditional schools. And we'd call that a boarding school, wouldn't we?
Yes, definitely a boarding school, and obviously what we call a public school as well, probably.
Yeah,
which is weird name, isn't it? A public school. It's not public. It's a private school. You have to pay to go to it. Yeah.
yeah. But we have public schools and private schools which are usually in the day only. So, kids will get dropped off and picked up at the day. But a boarding school is a place where during term time, a student will sleep as well.
Yeah.
Which is what happens in Harry Potter. And these places do exist. Did you ever, how do you feel about boarding school?
I think they're awful. Well, I've never been to one. I've never stayed in a boarding school. My parents used to tease me when I was a child. If I was naughty, they'd send me off to boarding school. I'm like, oh, this sounds awful, So it seems very cruel, but I know there are reasons why some children have to go to boarding school. Parents work around the world and are traveling, all that kind of stuff. Plus, in theory, they're supposed to get a really good education by staying there all the time. But that's another story, another discussion. But so I've never been to one, but my impression is just like Hogwarts. You got these dormitories, so you share your room, don't you, with other boys. Sometimes very cold because it's quite an old building. And that's one thing. A lot of our big old public schools, boarding schools, are old buildings, aren't they? Hundreds of years ago.
So it's very similar again, isn't it?
Yeah.
No basilisks in the Chamber of Secrets, hopefully, though. But
at least they're safe places.
Boarding schools, boarding schools is a key piece of vocab for us today. And I think, they were very popular. Well, I say popular, but they were more common in the 60s, 50s, 60s, where affluent parents would send their children away, particularly if they were working in the military or something like this. And it was this idea. It's a very Victorian idea from the 40s and 30s, maybe. Obviously, the Victorian era was till 1901, but it's this hangover of children are seen but not heard. So quite often, affluent parents would send their children away to boarding school. But in our generation, and particularly these days, it's not as common. I think, maybe out of necessity, that children will go to boarding school. You'd have to be very affluent to do it, though. But maybe foreign students from other countries, if they're studying in the UK, would stay at a boarding school.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, as you say, sometimes it's necessary, I know, for practical reasons. But maybe, I think in olden times, as you say, children should be, being seen but not heard,
Seen but not heard, yeah.
And you just send your child away. You didn't worry about seeing your children grow up or spending time with them. It was the thing, you send them away, they get educated and disciplined and all that kind of stuff, and they come back as adults. It's quite a very, very old-fashioned kind of idea.
Yeah. Well, you said your parents teased you about it. Mine did as well. And my father would just say, "Oh, children are supposed to be seen but not heard." It was a kind of, thing. And these days I'd probably never say that to my son.
No.
Don't know. It just seems a bit archaic now.
But the parallels with Harry Potter and all his friends is that if you go away from home and then you spend all this time with other children, you have adventures, don't you? Because you haven't got your parents watching. Just like Harry Potter and all his mates, that's where all the excitement happened.
Yeah, and similarly in Harry Potter, I think they did stick to the 3-term system. So in the UK education system, I might be wrong about this, but we'll talk about the education system. There are 3 terms. You have 3 periods of learning. So you'll have a 1 term, 2 term, 3 term. Each they have a mid break called the half term, and then they have a holiday at the end. We're coming up for one now, I think, in the UK as we're recording this. I think the thing that basically made my wife made her say it's like Harry Potter, is the house systems at school. We had 4 houses at my school. One was green, one was yellow, one was red, and one was blue, which is exactly the same colors as Harry Potter. They all had their names. I was in Chine, which was green, which was the green, which is apparently Slytherin. So there you go. That would have been me. But my son, the school he's at, the house system is colors. So you have red house, blue house, you know, and so on, so on. Yellow house, and I think green house. Well, that sounds like a place in a garden, doesn't it? But anyway, it's either 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And
yeah, a lot of places have the. I mean, the primary school that my children used to go to, they have a house system. I mean, it's not it's not quite as formal as a Harry Potter situation. They obviously just have these groups. So, like on sports day, they can compete between different houses. You know.
Yeah. But that's. I mean, we said we don't have Quidditch, but we do have house games. So you know, quite commonly there's the kind of summer sports day, we call it sports day, where Red House will compete for against Blue House and so on and so on. And it creates, obviously, the school itself, they like a uniform, which is similar to Harry Potter, although they have their individual kind of house uniforms, I think, which have their badges. But they have this uniform, which shows that they belong to a certain school. And then individually, they'll have their houses inside the school, like Harry Potter, and they compete. It's rivalry. And one of the rivalries is not only the games in the summer, the sports games, but also a points system, which is very familiar. I think Luciana somehow was like, oh my goodness. Okay, no, J.K. Rowling didn't make it all up then. So, you know, sometimes my son will get 3 points for his house for doing something, you know, well.
Yes. Yeah. But you mentioned the uniform. Yes, we have school uniforms. We don't tend to have the capes that they wore in Harry Potter. Although I have seen some very sort of posh private schools where they do still wear a cape. Sometimes a white collar, upturned white collar. Very, very smart, you know.
A lot of Harry Potter reminds me, you know, the Hogwarts experience, this going on a train, the boarding school, reminds me of a very old school, traditional, posh private school, boarding school. It's not. It doesn't remind me of state education.
No, definitely different. Although interestingly, we say posh kids going to boarding school. I mean, traditionally, it's posh kids, it's wealthy parents from very sort of upper class families. In the films, again, Harry Potter and his friends aren't particularly posh, are they?
No. I mean, you could get scholarships to private schools. I mean, that word posh is an interesting word in itself because it's slightly, the way a lot of people use it, slightly negative, isn't it? Like it's sort of saying a little bit too much, a little bit too, you know, people go, it's very posh. It's almost like it's a bit too formal, bit awkward, you know, a bit too rich. Yeah, it's, you know,
sometimes say, don't they?
Yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, no, you know, I can't remember whether Harry Potter. I know they have I think they have head boy and head girl, and things like this. But in my school, we had a head boy and head girl.
And
then we had prefects.
There
we go.
Yeah, I was a prefect at school.
Were you?
Yeah.
What did you do as a prefect?
Yeah, it wasn't very exciting. It was like at dinner time, I had to make sure the younger kids lined up for dinner, or I might have to open the door for teachers, or that's nothing very exciting, to be honest. But I got to wear a badge, you know.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I was allowed to go in for dinner first because then I had to go and do lining up duty later, that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's interesting. Is a prefect was almost it was interesting. It's like a sub-level of authority, wasn't it? It's like they weren't teachers. They had no real authority in that sense, but they were kind of entrusted by teachers. And I think it gave this staggering hierarchy. So you had the teachers. Quite commonly, you know, you had you have the head teacher, who would have been Dumbledore. I didn't go to Harry. But you have this head teacher, the headmaster, headmistress, sometimes we say, but head teacher is the neutral one. Then you have your deputy heads, which I suppose would be McGonagall. And then you have your heads of departments. And underneath the heads of departments, so you'd have the head of maths, the head of English, the head of blah, blah, blah. And under that, you'd have the teachers and then teaching assistants and then prefects who sort of enforced the law. But at the top of all the students, you had the head boy and head girl.
Yeah.
Were you a head boy?
Still happens. I mean, that happens at my son's secondary school now. You know, we still have a head boy and a head girl. Interestingly, we say head boy and head girl. Going back to Harry Potter, we had Hermione, didn't we? So, girls and boys there. But a lot of these public schools, private schools, boarding schools are single sex, aren't they?
So I don't think there's not as much anymore.
No, okay.
I think I don't know these days with boarding schools. I think there are still boys' schools and girls' schools. I went to Windsor, and you have Windsor boys and Windsor girls, but a lot of them are kind of co-ed now. They're mixed now, especially the private school when they're not sleeping. The dorms would be separate. You know, boys and girls wouldn't sleep together.
Oh yes,
yes. Potentially asking for trouble, isn't it? But you know, in terms of the schools, yeah, some of them still are boys' schools, girls' schools, but I don't think it's as. Yeah, I think the segregation has somewhat ended.
Yeah, of course. One thing else that you get at schools are the school bullies. Just like in Harry Potter, there's usually a dominant boy who's beating people up or teasing them or threatening them or something like that. I think that's changed much.
At my school, his name was Draco.
Okay.
But you get these kids that are, you know, and you get this like a clique of slightly rebellious, naughty students. And you know, you get these kind of students as well that are a bit, you know, nasty as it's school, isn't it? That's life. But I think the uniforms, the house system, the point systems, the Great Hall, obviously in Harry Potter, it is exceptional with their kind of, they have both dinner in there and this kind of assembly and the ceremony with the hat.
Yes.
Can't remember what that's called.
It's a
naming ceremony. Isn't it?
I can't remember, but it's a central meeting place, isn't it? The Great Hall. In fact, I don't know. Have you been to the Harry Potter museum in London?
Not yet.
Okay, because the first thing you do is you walk into a recreation of the Great Hall, and it's very impressive.
Have you been?
Yeah, I've been. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Is it amazing?
Yeah. You get to see all the famous kind of sites, and it's quite educational as well because it does tell you how they make the film and how they make the special effects and the masks and things like that. But it's a good day out. Yeah.
I said not yet because my wife has been absolutely begging to go, and I would love to go.
Yeah, she's got to go.
And I think, you know, I could make some really good content there, you know, for Instagram and YouTube. I think it would be great.
If they let you.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Some places don't, do they?
No. But one of the other amazing things, they've got a recreation of the steam train as well. So you walk into this railway station, they've got a life-size steam train. Now, there's something that's changed. I think if you went to school now, you wouldn't really go on a steam train anymore.
No. Probably a bit more Victorian or up until the late 1960s. We don't have steam trains, but, you know, I used to go to school. Well, I used to go to college at the age of 16 on a train every day. Not on a steam train. Doot, doot. Yeah. I'm that old. But you know, back in the day, it was rail travel, especially pre-1950s, 60s, before all the beaching cuts. Rail travel was far more common. So a lot of kids would go to school on train.
Yeah, I mean, there were fewer motorways. People didn't use motor cars, so it was a long way to drive to these places. So yeah, train was the quickest way to travel. And of course, the other interesting thing is they went from King's Cross, didn't they? Platform
9 3/4. 9 3/4.
Well, you can still go and visit platform 9 3/4 if you go to King's Cross now. There's a plaque on the wall, and there's often a long queue of tourists waiting to have their photo taken.
This is the point where we try to make it really deep and go, is that art imitating life or life imitating art? I don't know. But basically, it's a cash grab, isn't it? I think it makes a lot of money. But going back to the real thing, I mean, the train thing would have been something that maybe J.K. Rowling would have heard from her parents. I don't know. I don't think she's old enough to remember anything of that. I think she's younger than me. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, but she would have heard from her parents talking about the steam trains and something about Hogwarts Express always reminds me of the Flying Scotsman. It's got a similar look to it, except it's red. But going back to the things with school, that Great Hall, we have those halls at school. Not as elaborate as that, but quite commonly we have assembly there, don't we? Kids will go for assembly and the head teacher will read out the announcements, much like Dumbledore. So it's very similar to what we see in Harry Potter, but without the magic and the illuminations and all this kind of thing. But it's very and you have a groundskeeper sometimes, a person that looks after it, does the maintenance and all that, which would have been your Hagrid. They don't
That's
often
right.
live. Yeah, sometimes they live on the grounds.
They do. They do. They're like a caretaker, as you say, a groundsman, because often these private schools have amazing sports grounds, don't they? Because they play sports is a very important part of the curriculum, and they have fantastic sports grounds, just like Hogwarts. So they usually have somebody who's got to keep an eye on the grounds. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot. So we've talked about the house system, the Great Hall. Obviously, we don't call it the Great Hall; we call it the Hall, and that sometimes doubles up as your dining hall, and that's also something we see in Harry Potter. Everybody sitting down for dinner and things like that. We don't have owls delivering letters. No,
they haven't done that yet. Haven't introduced that yet.
No, the owls just aren't bothered over here. But I mean, obviously, if you're at boarding school, you would get post, and you would get these care packages as well from your parents, worried that you weren't eating well enough, and things like that. So that's realistic in the certain realistic. I never thought I'd call Harry Potter realistic. But what other things can you think? I definitely say,
carrying big piles of books around, that sort of thing for all your different subjects. I mean, maybe a lot of it is online now, who knows? But I imagine students walking around with big piles of textbooks with all the information you need.
The punishment systems like detention and things like this, that happens in the UK.
Yeah. Not the cane, of course. We don't have the cane anymore.
No, do they do that in Harry Potter? I don't think they do.
They do it in Harry Potter, do they? But yeah,
Let's hope not. That's awful.
But you used to be hit with a stick if you were really naughty, weren't you? In a British school, that's all. That's
do you remember that? Do you remember?
Never happened to me. I was a very good boy, so never got into trouble.
But was it? Did it happen when you were?
Yes, my secondary school. I mean, you had to do something really bad. It had to be quite exceptional. But you would go to the head teacher for the cane. Yeah.
Yeah. God. Yeah. God, my goodness. I think my dad had it a few times. Sometimes they used to rap you on the back of the knuckles as well.
Yeah.
I was lucky they had just sort of, a few years before, phased it out before I went to school. Yeah. So I think I would have been caned a lot, to be honest.
Anyway, it's banned now. So, yeah.
Yeah. Another thing as well is common rooms. So in Harry Potter, they go into this kind of individual house common rooms, but in the UK we had sixth form common rooms where the older students could hang out and do studying and things like this. But I think if you had to think of a school that reminded you of Hogwarts or a university, what would you go for?
I think something like Eton would come to mind. Where else is there? Eton, Gordonston, I think, is a big public school up in Scotland.
Yeah.
And then there are some universities that look like Hogwarts. I think the one in Durham, University of Durham, looks like Hogwarts. And funnily enough, I said my son goes to secondary school. His school's quite old-fashioned, and the original building where they have their hall looks a bit like Hogwarts when you walk in. It's not like Hogwarts, but it has that impression. It's an old building with a big sort of wooden hall, and they have a house system and stuff like that. But that's where the similarities end for him.
But I think in terms of no magic. But in terms of like the house games and stuff like this, I think there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Schools commonly play games like rugby and stuff like this. And we've talked pretty much exclusively about schools, but of course there's a lot outside as well, like Ministry of Magic is similar to a lot of these kind of ministry. Politics is all the politics mentioned in Harry Potter that's similar to British politics in a lot of ways. Perhaps we need some wizards in politics. But there's a lot there as well. This idea of kids coming home for term and then they've got 2 weeks of not sure what to do before they go back to school, and they miss it. And there's so much going on. But I would say, Oxford University and Cambridge University.
Oh well, yes.
I think Oxford University in particular. Sure, that was the one that really inspired a lot of Harry Potter. But they've got these great halls and these elaborate kind of sort of traditions, and also You know, the boats on their boats, like punting. There's punting in Cambridge and Oxford. Isn't that in Harry Potter? I'm sure that's in Harry Potter. It feels vaguely familiar.
But it's but it's still very, very old fashioned. That's the thing, isn't it? Punting's quite an old fashioned kind of activity. The other thing is you see the students walking around with scarves, don't you? With their house colours on.
Yeah. I had a scarf with a house colour on it, green. My Slytherin outfit. No, it's a chine. But yeah, I mean, there's so much that's very familiar. Queuing up for things and being told off, and that what is it, Mrs. Norris and the janitor Filch, that kind of thing. This sort of bloke creeping around. Oh, I'm just cleaning up the floors. This kind of thing. You know, that was familiar in my school, and sometimes different schools would play games against each other. So my school would take on another school at rugby or something like this. So that's a bit again like this not the Triwizard tournaments, these kind of things, all these maybe the Triwizards.
And there's the food as well, school dinners, you know. Haven't changed much really. Or you go to the dining hall, or what we sometimes call the refectory, where you queue up and have your kind of food slopped on your plate.
And competitions and everything like that, and the general mischief of you know, there you've got the Weasleys, the Weasley twins. I can't George and the other one, can't remember his name. Gosh, the other George and it might not even be George. Anyway, we should cancel that bit. The Weasley twins and their little general mischief and stuff like this, and they're always kids up to no good, up to a bit of naughtiness, you know, this kind of things, and get told off. And there's showing off and things like this, like Harry Potter does with his broomstick. But yeah, there's a lot familiar about Harry Potter, a lot more than I think my wife realized was real or based on reality, rather than just a complete construct of J.K. Rowling's mind. And I think that's what makes it even better in some ways, because it's using our reality, the traditions, the history, these portraits of teachers that came before, to shape a reality that's so familiar and so possibly real, but with this fantastical edge. I think it's wonderful. Are you now excited for the December series?
I'm even more excited now, Roy. Thank you. I can't wait. And I'm going to go and watch all the old films again, just to kind of get me in the mood.
Perfect. And then start on the Fantastic Beasts films as well, because they're very good. But what I want to say, if you have any questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please do let us know in the comments. And if you do want to support this podcast, you could always buy a cup of tea for me or for Rob. I pointed to you when I said me. I'm getting lost. For me or for Rob, or you know, both of us. And you can find a link for that in the description below. But for me, I just want to say thank you very much for listening. And Rob, thank you for joining me and talking about such a fascinating topic.
Hufflepuff.
What?
I don't know. I thought I'd say something Harry Potter.
I know. Like, oh, you Hufflepuff. Griffith. I would definitely be a Hufflepuff, I think, in the films. You know, we'd all like to be a Ravenclaw or a Gryffindor, and I'd be a Hufflepuff. I like the badger and the plants and stuff. I'm pretty chill. But thank you very much, and it's been absolute magic talking with you today.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Rob. See you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.